This tutorial shows a 2.5D scene. There are two ways to do it, and the other one is mainly for the screen. So if you want to do a recording of different kinds of layers, kind of parallax images, but if you want to project them on a wall, it's a bit different idea. So I have this project here, which is actually started with these color bars. You don't really watch it on the screen, you kind of project it on the stage manager. So here's basically the stage managers showing how your camera is seeing this in the studio. And we can also turn on the projection geometry. So these are the kind of the image plates behind the camera somewhere on the kind of on the studio. Each layer is represented as a kind of a yellow image over here. You can also see the camera view. So this is what the camera will see in the end, and you control it here in the studio. Basically, you have the camera option over here, and you kind of move your camera as it would move with the tracker, and that should produce some kind of a parallax effect. I've set the camera now to be Y position 1.5, something like that. This is kind of representing that the camera is not on the floor. It's on a stand. I created first these color bars just to show that I have multiple layers on the same image. Why a color bar? It shows if there's any kind of missing element. Screaming color, it says yes, there's should be something here. Also, my scenes, it's maybe a bit too complex. There's clouds, there's backgrounds, there's actually kind of second layer of background that I didn't use in the end. There's a dome, and then there's a ground, and then some boulders on the very front. So it would make sense to have like a maybe 3 layers or 4 layers, and also would make sense to them to be much kind of wider, so they should kind of occupy much larger region than just kind of the basic image boundaries. We can get the color bar from the Consturct menu. So first I read that this is filter, but it says a filler, and you can get like black filling image, white image. There's gradients, some colors, but also color bar. And let's use this color bar 75, so it's not so harsh. What is important that this should be the size of our screen. So our media format should match our screen size. So our screen size is again 2640 by 1056. So that's the LED wall. So this is our base. And for this, we are adding new layers, maybe starting from the very furthest away and continuing on the one that is the most closest to the camera, because this is the way the layers are also assigned here in live. So the one on top is the one in the background, and one on the bottom is the one on the front. So we can fetch clips here by right-clicking and choosing fetch clip. This is not very intuitive, but it goes to the Consturct menu like a temporary solution, and we can select one media and start dragging it. I'm releasing the mouse, and this is the most counterintuitive UI interface I've ever seen, because you have to click close Consturct here while dragging the thing, and while you drag it and click it in the right place, it will pop up over there. It doesn't follow any known UI standards. Two important things here. First of all, it's not the right size yet, so we have to change the size at some point. And the second thing is that we are not projecting it to the wall. We can change the size from the canvas menu. So this is important. So it's not in the media menu this time. It kind of assumes, okay, we have our stage size and we're going to be working on that, but there's a new layer that is kind of a called a canvas, and that size should kind of be bigger than the screen. So we can just scale it, and you can see that it goes on all sides to be bigger than the screen. So let's keep importing. So right click, fetch, and start dragging. Canvas and scaling. Right click, fetch. I'll skip that layer. Bring that in over there, and okay, this time it's a little bit difficult to say what size it is, but at least it should be bigger than the main screen. You can see kind of something is still missing. Well, don't worry, we'll fetch the foreground. So let's put that there. The canvas size bigger than this. It starts to make sense. And last ones, I have the borders here. And the canvas scale like that. Okay, so I have already my layers, but they're not really projecting anywhere. So I have to do something that tells that, hey, we have a screen. You should project these images to the wall. So each of these, what are now called nodes, they're basically layers, needs a separate projection information. So we go from plugins, and we have this plane to wall plugin. So if you don't find it, we have the all plugins or Assimilate plugins. It's many of these are kind of related to that we project things on the wall. Here we have to do it kind of for each image separately. So we apply this in a layer. I think just double clicking it will also do the same, but just to be sure. And now it says, okay, here there's a plane on the wall, and we're doing something with that. We can now maybe look at the stage manager and how this behaves on the screen. So the plane hasn't been set up to the stage manager yet. So we have the menu over here now. It's called the plane to the wall. So that's the plugin we just imported. And we have to say, hey, let's link to the stage manager. And also for the projection, you link this to the shot camera. So so that this image here is kind of behaves and moves along with the camera. So we work with this one, and we pull it back. So we translate it in Z space, so we can see it kind of shrinks down. Also, it should move here on the screen, and it actually should move behind the wall. So somewhere over there, you can see it's going in the distance. And while it's moving backwards, we also need to scale it up, so it needs to fit the wall. And also maybe it's a good thing to scale it to make sure that the canvas itself is big enough. So when I brought this in, I don't think the canvas of any of these was really, it was kind of the size of the stage, but maybe it's good to make sure that they are a little bit kind of extending the stage, because we'll be moving on the space, so the images while moving, so they should kind of extend the boundaries of the stage, as you can see here. So for this one, now the snowy land, please, and there it goes to the right place. There it goes to the right place. And once more, scale it up, maybe a bit more than needed. All right, so we have this one assigned. Now let's do the same for everyone, every layer, plugins, plane to wall, apply and layer. Okay, let's link it to the stage manager. Let's link it to the camera. So now we can see. So the snowy land should be between the last screen and the clouds and the screen. Somewhere over there. And if it's not visible here, it's probably too high or too low. So there we can lift it up. Let's do the dome. Plugins, applying to wall, applying layer, link to stage manager, and link to the shot camera. And then pull it back. Scale it. Let's lift it up. There it is. The rocks, layer, link to stage manager, link to shot camera. See, they disappeared. So pulling it back here. So this is the kind of the rocky ground, not these front rocks. They call boulders. So these are really this is really close to the dome layer. Probably should see something now. Just lift it up a little bit. The last one is the rocky boulders. So once more, let's go now slowly. Selecting layer, selecting plugins, selecting plane to wall, selecting apply and layer, selecting link to state manager, selecting projection, selecting link to shot camera, and I'm using this projection view. This just to see that when we're pulling this image back, we can see where it's going. So this one is kind of just in front of the, just behind the screen, in the scene itself. And oops, how big this should be, and then I lift it up. But you can adjust this to your likings, etc., etc. All right, they should all be now attached in a position. We can view this now, hopefully through camera. So our main camera is not active yet, so let's turn it active. So we have kind of simulating the tracking data. And now as I move this camera in the studio, we should get this parallax effect going. Maybe best to see it through the projection stage manager. You can also view what the camera sees, look at what the frustum sees, and you can see something is not really right. I think it's because our main camera is kind of on the floor position in our studio model. So we lift it up, so it's probably in the height of, I don't know, 1.2 meters. Also focal length 35. We could maybe expand it a little. We have 20 to 70 camera in our studio, and this might be something you need to adjust, like how far they are from the camera in order to get the right parallax. And this is something that it's basically, as it's a 2D image without actual measurements, you can't really know. But basically, like, these background layers are very far, many kilometers away, but these ones are maybe 1 or 2 meters from the camera, and this is maybe 20, 30 meters, I don't know, 10 meters. So check these things out and see what works. Again, viewing this final outcome through the camera frustum, we have panning going on. Not so much parallax going on between these layers. I think they are very close to each other. Something I'd like to change, okay, is that the foreground rocks, they should move more in relationship to the hut. So let's see our boulders, where they are. So selecting the boulders from here as a layer, and the plane to wall and the Z position. Okay, that's really just behind the screen. So maybe the rocks and the stones, they almost have the same number. So maybe this is about 10 meters. You can do 10 and then change the sign to be 10 minus meters. And then you have to again kind of raise the width, the height, and also the position, because it kind of is dependent on the camera. And if that's 10 meters away, maybe this is all 11 meters away. So it's a kind of funky calculator. Now it says minus 5 meters, but if I say, okay, I want to do minus 11 meters. So it's actually not doing 11 meters, but it's subtract 11 from minus 5. And this is minus 16, which is wrong. And also, if I exit this now, it doesn't execute the function because the first enter key does the calculation and second enter key executes the function. So a better way to do is like just to say I want 11 meters and that's negative, so I change the sign and then I press the enter key, so it's not a calculation. So it went way back, so bring it back in a little bit bigger and a little bit higher. I think that's a nice location. And now if we check out through the camera, do they behave differently? So camera and panning. So I think now the front rocks are behaving much more. If sometimes you might have some of the images spilling away, you can also just drag and drop, and I think holding down Shift key lets you shrink the images so you don't have to do everything numerically. Last thing I've added is to add some focus blur or foreground, the boulders. So I'm selecting this layer, and it's a bit tricky to find. It's not, there's a setting here in the canvas called use blur and softness is the value of the blur, but it's not really doing it in a way I want. I can pump it up to 100. You can see it's actually just blurring the boundaries. So it's kind of taking the alpha channel and blurring that one, and it really produces nasty results if you pump it too much. So I found that in the fill matte option, it's kind of separating what is the fill is the image that you see, and the matte is the alpha channel as you see. And it seems to be better to do the blur over here. And here the blur setting is kind of more traditional values from Photoshop. So 10 is already quite heavy. You might see some jagged edges, and this is because the matte or the alpha channel is not blurred. So we select the matte and also do the blur over there. So it helps out soften those files or the edges. And adjusting like how much you want to see the blur, it's up to you. The snowy cloud mountains, they probably are very blurred. So I've used maybe an 8 blur over there, and maybe also on the matte because there might be some jagged edges over here. So I think that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed 2.5D in Assimilate Live FX. Be sure to check out Assimilate's own tutorials. It's a bit complex process because there's so many kind of places where you can fiddle on with the numbers, and if you have a complex scene like 4 or 5 layers like I have to here, it's kind of getting a bit frustrating while at times. But yeah, keep on rocking, trucking, rolling.